Technology. Man, you don't.
Good evening and welcome to this broadcast of Black Talk Radio News. My name is Scotty Reid, of course, and just really excited about some things that's happening on the network. Y'all know this particular program has been lagging in terms of doing live broadcasting. And so I'm getting back into that, but we got a lot of big changes coming up with Black Talk Radio Network. It's about to be spun off into a for-profit, spun off from the nonprofit so that it can better help the nonprofit work that we do through the Black Talk Media Project. And so, you know, tonight is a special program for me whenever you're talking to an old friend. And so, but tonight's program is about bridging the divide. I'm having a conversation with my old comrade, Ras Munyiga Nosakhere, and me and this brother go way back. And so we hope to just talk to him about his life, which has been deeply intertwined with some of the most influential Black movements in American history. You know, when I first met him, he told me how he was served by the Black Panther Party. I think they had like a breakfast program, and he'll share those details later. But I met him later on in life when he was an adult as a member of the Black Autonomy Federation. For longtime listeners of Black Talk Radio Network, y'all probably remember Black Autonomy Federation Radio, which Ross was a co-host. So he has a very interesting story. We were joking, and when we were talking before the program, I think a couple of days ago, when we were talking about doing this program, and I sent him some questions, right? He was like, man, I could write a book, all right? And so maybe he should write that book, because I think his life has been interesting, and hearing the stories that he shared on Black Autonomy Federation Radio. And I think he has a lot to teach, you know, people his age, people my age, and younger. But you can learn from anyone, but I think he has some really deep life lessons to share. So we're going to, you know, explore his early life under the guiding influence of the Black Panther Party and his vital work with the Black Autonomy Federation. Now, if you're an activist or a student of history, I happen to be both, or if you're someone passionate about social change, I'm that too. Definitely an abolitionist, y'all know that. But we're hoping, you know, that this podcast will just give you a glimpse into the heart of struggle that different generations have went through in this country. So Ross, long time, you know, no talk to, but it's good that you could join us tonight. How are you?
I'm doing good, my brother. Thank you for inviting me. You know, I really appreciate being back on Black Talk Radio. We missed you, man. Well, I missed you. You know what I'm saying? Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Yeah. And before we get into the interview, there was something I wanted to give you a chance to address, because you had us scared for a while, man. You know, but praise be to Jah, as I know you, as you refer to the Creator, that you and your family were able to escape with your lives with that fire at your home. So how's that going? And, you know, you had a little scare with your health. So on a personal level, man, we really want to know how you and the family doing.
Oh, man, you know, my family is resilient. You know, my queen and I are resilient because, you know, we have faced many obstacles. You know, she got together with a rebel and an activist, and we've been together almost 40 something years now. So, you know, this was another obstacle to cross. Interesting enough, we were not there when the fire took place. My son was there house sitting, you know, and to this day, I got a report from the city on how it started, you know, but most of the damage was done by the fire department, because they didn't they didn't even go in. They just sprayed the whole house from the outside, broke the kitchen window, and just sprayed it from one end of the house to the other. And that's how they just put out the fire and left.
So it's not like we see on TV where they be rushing in to burning buildings and what have you.
My neighborhood, no, it wasn't like that.
Wow.
Put the fire out and let's get the hell out. That's what the city fire department did. And then when I about the full report, I never got one, but I got a bill for $200 for them boarding up what they broke. So knife in North America, my brother.
Wow. That's just sad, but it's not uncommon, which makes it even sadder. Because it's so uncommon, on a similar story, I could tell you like I live in I call it historic, traditionally Black community in the country. Right. Charlotte is the major metropolitan, which is like 5 minutes away, then Gastonia. But we live in a rural area in Gaston County. And so right before you get to Mount Holly city limits is the end of, well, it's not the end of it, but that's where they put the city limits. And right when you cross into what we call Old Highway 27, or I call Rankin Town, going back to when it was a colony and some of our people was here. And so this guy had a seizure at a softball game that was being played on the ball field. And this is all owned by the Black community, run by a Black community. And they be having, a bunch of events there, having games, family reunions. We had one of our family reunions down there. And so they call 911, like everybody would think to do, call 911. So they called 911, it routed them to Mount Holly, and they told them that they couldn't dispatch, ambulance to come get this guy, that it had to be one of the counties, which is quite further. It's further away. And so this man could have lost his life, except for there was some Black people with some healthcare skills that worked in healthcare that was there to help him.
Right. Wow. Yeah, well, we're enlightening communities is still very much part of North America. And the reason why I say North America, because I'm in Canada.
Right.
And
I wasn't going to divulge that information, but since you went ahead, but yeah, you're in Canada, and we have listeners in Canada, actually, Black Talk Radio has reach. But right. Let's jump into this interview, man, because we only got you for a short time. And so we don't, want to lose you anytime soon. But can you start by telling us just a little bit about your early childhood? Share what you shared with me when we first met, putting together Black Autonomy Federation Radio. And you told me, I think y'all call yourselves Panther Cubs, or is it a different name if you didn't have a parent in the Black Panther organization? But what were you? You were a Panther kid, though. I heard you describe it like that. So can you share a little bit about your early life? How did they come into your life?
Okay, well, I grew up in South Central Los Angeles, and I like to call the place where I grew up was the Black Belt of Southern California, because I grew up in the neighborhood where LA, Compton, Willowbrook, and Watts all converged. Like we were right in the center of that. I grew up in the center of that, and about 4 blocks away on a street called El Segundo and Willowbrook, the Black Panther headquarters were there. They were stationed there. And I first read about the Black Panthers, I was about maybe 9, 10 years old, but it was the sisters that I first run into. Like they were selling the paper, and they were so respectful, even though, our group, we were ghetto kids, we were kids from the hood. And, we would see them when we go to a place called Clark's Drugs, which was the nearest store to us. When we go buy our ice cream or candy, we'd see them out front. And we would tease them, you know, hey brother, hey sister, hey brother, 'cause that's what they used to say when people walk by to sell their paper, and we'd be mimicking it, laughing about it. And you know, they started laughing too. They didn't get mad, but you know, they told us, hey, you know, once you take your paper, take it to your parents or read it yourself. You know what I'm saying?
This was
And
a free paper.
huh?
It was a free paper.
Well, you know, no. I
Okay.
mean, for us, it was free. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
I was just trying to refresh my memory because Sister
Right.
Jonina,
Right.
you know, Lorenzo Irvin's wife, she told me that she was like the national editor for it, if I remember correctly.
Yes, Joe Onina was head of the Black Panther paper for a long time.
Okay.
You know, and for a long time.
Mhm.
You know, she's a journalist, by the way.
But you mentioned that you first read about him when you were 9 years old, and so I assume you read about him before you met the sisters on the corner with the paper. So where'd you read about him at?
In the newspaper, man, like when the Black, got to realize when the Black Panthers first started, and in California, you know, they started in Oakland, they were all over the press. You know what I'm saying? They were all over.
And not always in a positive light either.
Not always in a positive light, but you know, the community were, you know, pretty much glad to see these brothers and sisters. You know what I'm saying? Because they were standing. And my parents came from that generation that came up from the South, you know, to escape all the tyranny and cruelty and brutality that was happening in the South. They came in the 1940s and moved to California, which a lot of the Panthers during that time, Huey and others, many others shared that same experience as I did, you know, that they, you know, we were like first generation there in Cali looking for a better life. And, you know, there was this brick wall still, even in Cali. And with that, with the civil rights movement in full effect, and with everything that was going on during that era, you know, the Panthers feel a great place during that period.
Well, that's a perfect segue. So how did the Black Panther Party impact you specifically as a child? Could you share some specific incidents or influence? You just shared one about y'all were mimicking and teasing the sisters on the corner, and they, you know, start laughing. And so, but what were the most impactful things that you remember about specific incidences?
Well, you know, by them sisters, though, they carried themselves with grace. You know, they had afros, they were beautiful, you know, and just the way they treated the community. So I would roll my little Stingray bike down there one day to the Panther headquarters. And I saw they were doing, and when I walked in, everybody was like, hey, little brother, you know, like treating me with respect. You know, I'm about 10 years old then. And I asked, you know, they asked, well, what you want? You need something to eat? You know, you hungry? You need anything? And I said, nah, I'm just checking things out. You know what I mean? And then they said, would you like to help us sell the paper? You know, one brother. And then I seen, I didn't know who he was at one time. Brother came from the back, and I was Bunchy Carter. And he said, hey, young blood, you know, and smiled at me. And he went on about his business, you know, and I found out later who that was, you know what I'm saying? But they just showed a lot of love, man. And I said, sure, you know, but I had to ask my parents first, you know what I'm saying? But I took the papers anyway, and so and I got home, I was hiding it from my parents, you know, because I didn't know what they'd feel about it, you know. Showed my aunt first, like my aunt and uncle raised me, right? So I showed my aunt the paper, right? She said, oh, where'd you get this? I was down the street, you know, a few blocks. You know. She said, well, you Black Panther now? I'm like, no, I'm just, you know, helping them out with the paper. That's how it all started. Like I developed that relationship. Wow. So I was like Panther Cub, I would say.
Okay. So let's fast forward a little bit. You start growing up. You were 10 at the time when you took the papers to help with the paper, and when you said you first met Bunchy Carter, right? You said, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Yes.
So can you describe what it was like growing up? Okay, here you are as an adolescent. I don't know, you have contact with them how long? Up into your teens or whatever. But when did you notice that it was like that they were engaged in political activism, to use one term, but a lot of social activism or social work that a lot of people don't know about?
Well, just from the ongoing, fights they were engaged in, and I'm not talking about physical fights, I'm talking about, their ideological and political fights that they were engaged in. And the whole community, witnessed that, from Oakland all the way to Compton, even into San Diego, So I grew up hearing all this, seeing all this, and just hearing most is selling the newspaper every day. But even going to some of the meetings, like I had a basic understanding of what was going on. And the greatest impact, well, we're down on 41st and Central when the Panthers were attacked, And,
I remember you mentioning that to me. I don't know if we was on air or, the conversations we have off air, but didn't you witness the police like getting to shoot out and kill some Panthers, like attack their headquarters or something?
Well, no Panthers were killed in that fight, but there was like almost like they spent hours, I'd say maybe 14, I can't remember the exact, but the Panthers held their ground. And
so it was a siege.
Yes, but the whole community went out there. I even went out there in my bike, because if anybody was going to get killed, the whole community, I never seen from Watts to Compton were ready. Certain sisters and brothers we were there. And my parents didn't want me to go out there because they didn't want me to get hurt. But the community was just, the cops had it all blocked off, but we were there, where they had it blocked off. We had ourselves surrounded that area also.
Okay. I want to take a sidebar right quick. And because the scene that you just described, so I was having a conversation with a younger brother today. He's like a student pursuing his PhD. I believe, I could be wrong, but he's a student and he's an activist. He's an abolitionist as well, but he's like college age and he lives in New York, although he's in Alabama now. And he's trying to get this grant to come here. But we were talking about Black August, right? We were actually talking about this new AI technology and what have you. And so I was, telling him the pros and cons that I had discovered in the 2 weeks that I have been using it. But really, we've all been using some form of AI, for decades. You can take it back to the 1990s, the different programs, but that's neither here nor there. But I asked it to write an essay. I gave it some information about Black August and I told it to give me an argumentative essay that's gonna give like two perspectives. And it talked about how Black August was good in promoting unity, remembering history, raising awareness about political prisoners. Ruchell Magee, the oldest serving political prisoner in the United States, just got out. He's in his 80s, and there's been a couple of other ones that's gotten out before him. But unfortunately, and that's the system of prison slavery is designed to do, and not only try to kill their minds, but kill their bodies. These brothers unfortunately passed away. But it talked about, as a negative about Black August, talking about that some people say it's divisive. It's not divisive to the Black community. Well, I guess we do have some Uncle Toms and whatnot, some proxy races, but it talked about it also may be seen as celebrating violence because the people you're commemorating have been accused of crimes and been convicted of crimes. And so some people, some critics might say, oh, you're celebrating violence. But what you just described right there is the police violence that has been going on since they were the slave catchers, because, you know, that's where that institution started. You know, some of us abolitionists still refer to them as slave catchers, for those that want to be that and play that role in that function in this society that we live in. But did you know, in me doing my research with this Blue Lives Matter, when they came out as an opposition to Black Lives Matter, did you know that that actually started in the 50s in Watts, in that area of Southern California, right where you're talking about? And that how that police chief, I can't recall his name right now, but that police chief had used heavy-handed tactics, and that it talked about the Watts riot was a response to pent-up anger over Black people being murdered every day, just like it's still going on to this day. I mean, other people getting murdered too, but we specifically have been the intended target, and we are disproportionately killed. And so I'm like, okay, if I was to be in a debate with someone, we going to point by point, like this country don't celebrate violence. So what is 4th of July, if not a celebration of the violence used to get your so-called independence from the king of you know, the UK, the king of Britain, the British Empire, and what have you? What is Blue Lives Matter? Young people celebrate, you know, the brutality. They celebrate the military, which I was in, which I don't allow people to thank me for my service. But I know I said a lot, man, but you just triggered that when you described that scene. So you said that the police laid siege to the Panthers headquarters, and they might have killed them if not for the community showing up and showing that they had their back.
That's 100%. That's 100% what you just said. They would have killed him. Matter of fact, it was just weeks after the murder of Fred Hampton Sr., you know what I'm saying, when they attacked the LA branch. So, I grew up around violence. Like I was 8 years old. I woke up one morning and there were Army trucks going down my street. I'm playing in my front yard and I just stopped and I looked and I'm saying, what the heck is going on? Then I seen smoke coming from the area of the Watts area. I could see it from my house. And that's when the riots were jumping off.
Yeah, the uprisings. I didn't mean to use the colonizers' language, but I meant, you know, the uprising.
Right. And so, yes, it was the uprising, you know, and that had a big impact on me, you know, because I felt always different. Like my community always felt different. Like it was like living, you know, basically in a war zone, you know, like, you know, we were in non-grata territory, basically, you know, and, you know, we were police, like none of them, you know, and those armies, the National Guard, I didn't see them in places like Torrance, Beverly Hills, or any place else, only within our community, you know, and, you know, that told me that, yeah, you know, they were taking care of the internal colony, you know, they were making us understand that we were constantly under siege, and that's the way it felt. That's back in the 60s and 70s, that we were constantly under siege and that the police can do anything to you know, and as a child, I witnessed that. I witnessed cops beat brothers in the front. You know, in front of the church I went to one Sunday morning, I went to church across the street. You know, 3 cops were beating this black man like he was nothing. You know what I'm saying? And I'm like, wow. You know, the pastor didn't even say anything. Y'all come on into church, man. You know what I'm saying? You know, and I'm like, you know, no, this can't continue. So growing up, you know, I had that kind of, you know, basic understanding from experience that we were a down-oppressed people. You know, we were people that were held in check by this type of violence. You know, and,
Yes.
that's-
Now, something I want to mention to the listeners, and you probably already seen the flick, but I keep telling people, you mentioned Fred Hampton Sr., who was the chairman. He's known affectionately as Chairman Fred, who was of the entire state chapter of Illinois, was he not?
Yes, he was.
Right.
He was. I mean, but there were other chairmen before him.
Right. But he was based in Chicago, and what I'm getting to is the movie Judas and the Black Messiah. Now, you know, I've interviewed and we're, you know, social media friends and but his son, you know, also named Fred Hampton. He's junior, and him and his mom, who is featured in that film, Judas and the Black Messiah, were hired as consultants. Lakeith Stanfield, you know, Academy Award nominee. I don't know if he won anything, but that other brother, the African brother, I can't think of his name right now, but he done played in some other roles, and I thought he did an excellent portrayal of Chairman Fred. But what Fred Hampton Jr. said about him, what impressed him about him, because like the creators, the producers, or whatever, really relied or allowed the family to be like, keep things in check. No distortions, no historic. But it talked about in there, it has a scene with Hoover, and a lot of people today, they're not going to read in their history books, whether I'm in North Carolina or Florida, no matter how much history they ban, you're not going to read about COINTELPRO. You know, that's why these January 6th insurrectionists think they political prisoners and think that the FBI only been targeting, just started targeting people or just became corrupt. But have you seen the film, and what are your thoughts on it? Because it speaks to that outright violence that you just talked about. It was part of a program, the FBI with state, local police who were targeting, trying to frame people, set people up, and outright assassinating them.
Yes. You know, it took me a while before I saw that movie. Like when it was in the show, I couldn't go see it because I didn't want it to trigger some things that I just have about that whole time period and my love for Fred, you know. But once I finally saw it, I thought it was well done, and I centered, and it really centered on the, you know, the love between Fred and Sister Akua, who was, you know, still a good comrade and, you know, a friend that I consider a close friend, her and Fred. Really. But it took me a while, that movie, man, because it just triggered a lot of stuff back in that period, and I couldn't watch it from the beginning. It took me 2 years before I finally saw it.
Okay.
But I thought it was well done, and you know, Hollywood got to put their little things in it,
Right.
their little isms in it. But yeah, I thought it was a good film.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I'm sorry, I cut you off. What were you saying?
No, I said for the most part, I thought it was good film.
Right. So let's fast forward. Black Autonomy Federation. When did Black Autonomy Federation enter into your life?
Well, you gotta understand. I mean, that's a real fast forward. You know, after the demise of the Panthers, like it left a void, especially in my teenage years.
Okay.
You know, where a lot of brothers who grew up like me, we were just angry. You know, and the gang thing started going even more. You know, and you know the Panthers were gone. You know, but the Crips were on the rise, and the Crips started as a, you know, the Community Revolutionary International Party. Like they were, you know, trying to fill that void. You know, but you know, I'm sure like the counterinsurgency, you know, got put in the game, and you know they went the path of drugs and gangsters. You know, but they still had a love for the community because both the Bloods and Crips back then lived by code. You know, so in after the strip, when I was in high school, about when I was 17 in the 12th grade, I started this organization called Black Youth Awareness Council.
Okay.
You know, and from that, you know, we were doing some real, you know, community organizing, but student organizing, and we were trying to organize a citywide, both Compass School District and LA School District Black Youth Awareness Council all over Southern California in the schools. We have chapters of it.
Okay.
You know, and from that, I ran across brothers that were, you know, part of the entire revolutionary movement back in the day. And when I say entire, like they were the catalysts for a lot of the Black liberation movements, and that was members of RAM, you know, and you know, I had much respect for.
Where was what is it, BLA at the time, Black Liberation Army?
The Black Liberation Army was an underground segment of the Black Panther Party.
Okay.
And, they're like, you know, there's something, you know, totally different, but it's all cup.
But I'm saying, but they were active underground because you had mentioned, you know, the void, but I'm trying to place that their activities, Sister Asada Shakur and others, at that period in your life. So you were in high school while they were doing that.
Right.
Had been forced underground and eventually, you know, forced to leave the country.
Right. They were underground.
Okay.
And that's why, and they were mainly centered on the West Coast. I mean, on the East Coast back then, you know, because of the whole thing with Asada and Sundiata and all of them. And by them being underground, we didn't get the news about that. I didn't know anything about the BLA till about 1976, my second year in university. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
You know, but in that, like, I learned a lot from the members of the Revolutionary Action Movement at that time, and mixing their ideology, or understanding their ideology and growing in their ideology, it just made me more humble and dedicated and committed, you know, activists, Black activists during their time, because they filled in a lot of gaps that I didn't know and that I didn't have, you know, even with the beginning of the Black liberation movement, and even how the Panthers.
What were some of those gaps, if you don't mind sharing?
Well, one is that, you know, a lot of people don't really know the Panther Party came out of RAM, the Revolutionary Action Movement, you know, and you know, Newton kind of talks about that in this book.
Huey
you know,
Newton.
Yeah, to die for the people. You know, there's a lot of misconceptions in what he said, but I won't get into all that.
Okay.
It's just people should know that there was a group that was tied to Malcolm, and that was tied to a lot of legends of our movement who went farther back, and they had a experience of past struggle, and they were moving towards, you know, a Black libertarian movement, but, you know, quietly and effectively. And that's what they wanted to maintain, you know. They didn't want to go above ground. And I think Bobby and Huey had problems with that. And that's how the Black Panther Party started. And the rest is history. And that's all. Yeah. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yes, I understand. So go ahead.
And so, yeah, so it was like during that time, like RAM, you know, the African People's Party, those organizations kind of filled in that gap for me in terms of helping me grow, you know, ideologically and politically as a young Black activist, you know.
So how much later would Black Autonomy Federation enter? Because I would say by that time you probably were seasoned had some experience under your belts. So what kind of activities, that were you involved in that led you to Black Autonomy Federation? And, what are some of the things you learned from them? Like you mentioned that you learned from these other different organizations.
Well, Black Autonomy came after, you're right, I was well seasoned, and after I spent, some time in the military, some time in Africa. And, I was a student organizer at the university level for a while. And I lived there, went into the military, then, spent some time in Africa.
And let's stop right here for a moment, because I couldn't remember, and we were having the technical difficulties, and I meant to ask you, but it seemed like I remembered that you were a veteran, because we had that in common, because we talked about it and what have you. And so, that I learned a lot from my experiences in the United States military. I was in the U.S. Army. I learned discipline, to be more disciplined. I already had some discipline from organized sports, and from my mom. But that really taught me how to be self, make yourself do what you got to do. You don't need nobody, teach you how to take the initiative. But then that is the time that my life kind of went off the mainstream and more radical, I would say. And for those that choose to use that term, I don't look at it as a negative term, but I became radicalized by reading Malcolm X's biography during the Gulf War, when Daddy H.W. Bush was talking about bombing them people for 40 days and 40 nights, joking about all these people you about to kill. And then my perspective of the world and my place in it really changed. The LA uprisings happened with Rodney King, and me and some of my comrades that was in my unit at the time, we were stationed in Hawaii, and I was like, yo, dog, if this blow up and meaning get bigger, and they deployed us, we regular Army, so the chances of that is low. But if we got deployed and they gave us live rounds and told us to fire on our people, who you firing on the people, or are you gonna turn that gun on that person who gave you that unlawful order? You know what I'm saying? Because it would have been an unlawful order to do that against American citizens. But anyway, what led you? Lack of college money, not wanting to go into debt. I was part of the what they call the poverty draft. You hear what I'm saying? Didn't have parents that could afford to just pay my tuition and all of that. So I decided to go the U.S. Army. What led you to the Army? And did you have any conflicts, internal conflicts, like I just described to you while you were in there?
Well, for me, I was led to the Marine Corps, and basically it was to escape urban blight. You dig what I'm saying? And,
poverty draft sound like to me.
Exactly. And also, it was either, let's just put it straight, give it to you straight. It was either jail or the Marine Corps for me back then. You know what I'm saying? So, I chose the Marine Corps, but the kind of judge chose it for me. But I ended up in the Marine Corps and ended up being stationed in Hawaii. And they put me in a frontline unit in the beginning. And, we would go to the field every day. And I'm saying, man, this is crazy. They gave me 4 years. And we were going to the field every day, grunts coming back dirty. You know how Hawaii got that red dirt.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was being tired of that. I told a friend, man, we saw these guys and they were recon. And I'm like, they only went to the field when the whole battalion went to the field.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm saying, man, for my partner, we went to boot camp together. I said, man, why don't we get into that? Hell, we ain't got to go to boot camp every damn week. He said, sure, yeah, let's do it. I ended up getting into that trying out for it, and I made it. My buddy didn't, and I ended up becoming recon, which got involved with special ops and other things, and that's how I spent the rest of my time in the Marine Corps at Kaneohe Bay, Hawaii. That's where I was stationed.
And I do understand though the pressure, and on purpose. That's why they won't give you a pass like college for all, tuition-free schools and things like, because they need the cannon fodder. They need people to go kill other non-white people so that white supremacy can stay on top. And so, but I mean, I just, that was the first time, man, I was like, I was like really felt powerless, you know what I'm saying? And how these people really had control, in the military, man, especially if you was a Marine, they pretty much control your life or try to, you know what I'm saying, 24/7. And then when you look at some of the wars now, I don't know why you were in, if you ever got deployed to a war zone, but I did not feel like I was that politically active or thinking about politics when I went into the military, because I knew they had the power to send me to war. So I started paying attention to politics. That's why I started paying attention to it. But while I was sitting over there in Saudi Arabia, working on the communications network, I was never a grunt or anything like that. And then I just started reading the bomb data assessment reports, and I was seeing all the civilians being killed. And I was like, this is morally wrong. You know what I'm saying? And then just hearing the stories, and I was like, man, this is not for me. I got to get out.
Right. Yeah, well, yeah, I think you had the same attitude that developed within myself, like to get out. But I did go into missions that were off the books in terms of, it wasn't talked about, and the war was been over. But yeah. And if you read the book Bloods, right in the beginning, in the introduction, there's a paragraph about saying there was a massive insurrection at Kaneohe Bay, Hawaii.
Kaneohe Bay? I know what you're talking about, yeah.
And I was part of that.
Oh, really? I'm gonna have to look this up, man. I ain't know that.
Yeah, I was part of that. And soon as they said we were all going up for court-martial for, we were just defending ourselves against racist attacks. Anyway, soon as they put us through this fake trial, said we were going to get court-martial, which we just did not. Soon as that was over, they shipped us all out to the front lines. Let's go get you straight. And during that time, the brothers and I made a pact, is that all we want to do is come back home. So we had each other's back. And that's what the DAP came from, the real DAP. It was like we back, and we had decided we were going to come home regardless of the circumstance. Back then, they were shipping us to Iran. We were supposed to liberate the hostages that was at the embassy, but that got discarded thanks to a sandstorm. The coppers couldn't land. And I was so thankful for that. So yes, I know what you're talking about, Scotty. I really.
Yeah, and so like, and then I come from military family, poverty draft again, and it's not all poverty. Sometimes people just want to escape small towns and stuff like that, but they still don't have the money to just go travel, how some of these wealthy kids go on a holiday in Europe. And so, yeah, for some of us, it's just, we got to escape this doldrum or whatever small town or whatever blight that we're facing. But I do want to move forward to Black Autonomy Federation. So what kind of activities were you involved in with them? You brought your experiences, that you had, but what was the type of work y'all was engaged in mostly?
Basically, we were, educating the community and trying to develop community organizers. Like when I left the Marine, I was against all forms of authority. You just, and that's what that taught me. Like I hate all hierarchy, you know what I'm saying? And I couldn't put it, what I was feeling in plain language back then, because I was young and still born when I got out. But I knew I was against that BS, for till now with the rest of my life. I was like, authority is BS, you know what I'm saying? And that's what the Marine Corps did for me. Like I saw, the hypocrisy within it. When I got out, that's how I got to reading things about anarchism, Black anarchism specifically. And eventually when I came to Hawaii, when I came to Canada, because when I got out, man, it was in the 80s, everybody was talking about, supporting dude for president, the Reverend, you know what I'm talking about. I think from Chicago. Jesse Jackson. And I was pissed. Excuse my language, I was ticked off. Okay. Like, and cats that, I thought we were revolutionary. They were talking about, yeah, we support bro Jesse. I'm like, ain't this like crap? You know what I'm saying? Like, so that was not me. And I was done with the United States, the whole movement, everything. It just seemed like, they were going for the okie doke. They were going for the mainstream narrative, you know what I'm saying? So I split, and like spent time in Africa, then I came to Canada. When I came to Canada, there was a group online called the Black List. And that's when
called the Black what?
The Black List.
Black List.
Yes. It was they had a lot of conversations. Sister Marpissa.
I remember Sister Marpessa. She was a producer on a podcast and radio show I did. Yeah.
They started that list. And and for me, it was a way of, I found it by accident, and it was a way for me to stay in contact with the comrades in the States, because the States is my home, and I always wanted to keep that connection. And by then I was organizing a community organization here, called the Community Action Co-op. You know what I'm saying? And it was me and my wife, and we did all the things for almost 18 years here in the community. But from there, that's how I got introduced to Black Autonomy. I got introduced to Lo Brenzo and Bo Irvin, and their Black Autonomy Federation's ideas were very similar to what I was developing. Like they defined what I was feeling. And that's how I got involved in Black Autonomy. And we started organizing once we got together. I was part of Canada, so I was part of the Black Autonomy International, which I was making international connections.
Now, I remember a campaign called Organize the Hood. That was Black Autonomy Federation, right?
Yes, it was. Yes, we started that in 2013, around 2013. Yeah. And that was about, building capacity from the ground up, building a movement from the ground up, because we felt that was really missing. And it's like the people in the community has the psychology and the understanding, to really know what the problems are, and if have to engage the system in a way that is more productive for the masses of our people. And we still do believe that. I still believe that.
Yeah, and you got to take account for them gatekeepers. You know what I'm saying? Because I've been coming across them, but I'm not going to delve into that. Go ahead.
The hood.
Yeah, Organize the Hood. Even had a theme song. I remember the song is playing in my head right now because we used it as the intro and outro for Black Autonomy Federation Radio.
Right, exactly. Yeah, like brother, man, I can't think of his name right now, but he did a good job on
Mhm,
playing. You can find it on YouTube. Let's Organize the Hood's the name of the song.
mhm, mhm. So you mentioned, how long you've been living in Canada, and were the racial dynamics and discussions going on in the communities up there, were they similar or in what ways different from what you experienced in the United States?
Uh, well, first in Eastern Canada in Toronto, and I was in that area first before I came to where I'm at now.
Mhm,
Very similar. You know, the same issues of urban blacks exist in Eastern Canada. And when I speak of Eastern Canada, I'm talking about Ontario and all the way to Nova Scotia. Yes, the same issues of race and class, you know, and uh, black racism affecting the black community, you know, were definitely similar. It's just that the only difference was, Canada spends a lot of money, though. Most of their racism is front on the front lines of this country, of the Canadian state, is
mhm,
targeted at indigenous people.
mhm,
And I guess we'd be about number two. You know what I'm saying? And that's the only difference.
mhm.
That's that I saw.
Okay. For the listeners, I did find episode of Black Autonomy Federation Radio, and the its title was "Let's Organize the Hood: Fighting Homelessness, Unemployment, and Poverty." And so yeah, I'm also seeing "Let's Organize the Hood" 2013 conference. Somebody said there was a attendee that was over 10 years ago. They put a little clip. So yeah, it's a couple of episodes. Here we go, 2014. Let's Organize the Hood conference. How to start a BAF chapter in your city. Bringing back any memories?
Oh yeah, man. Yeah, man. That's a lot of work.
Yeah, man. And it definitely contributed to my understanding of the world. May not agree with everything that every person you come across may hold, the views they may hold, but they might share something with you and give you a different perspective that'll bring you around to on that particular way of seeing things that you see the logic in it. So, but I would just want to thank you, Doe, for being an elder, for putting in work, and but also contributing to my personal education, you know.
No problem. Bro.
So what's up with you now? Are you retired, Ross, or revolutionary can never retire really, but what are you up to now, man, that you would
Uh,
like to share?
okay, well, yeah, what I would like to share is a very important point. Thank you. What I'm involved in right now is basically healing from this surgery that I just had in terms of, prostate cancer,
Mm-hmm.
spending more quality time, finally some quality time with my family, my grandkids, etc. Uh, I will always be an activist. And when I speak where I am now, I speak as a Black man, as a grandfather, and as an autonomous human being. And I think that sometimes our partisanship gets in the way of really doing what's necessary for the people in general, And I think right now we have to keep moving to a space where we are putting the people first, not politics or ideology first. Let our actions be the ideology, because we got to get back to the community, and yes, I live in a working class community. I've been a worker most of our life, but I see we need community books, because everybody's not a worker in this period. We need to organize in communities, and that is what's missing to me from the Black struggle in this period, that putting our communities first. Right now, a lot of them, the people are just left alone. Let's keep it real. And we got to get back to community organizing.
Yes, sir. I wholeheartedly co-sign on to that. That's what we're trying to do right here in Gaston County, North Carolina, through the NAACP, but that's for a different time. So before we conclude this wonderful conversation that we've been having, and I just love you as a resource, and as a Black man too. And but what are some of the resources, books, or documentaries that you would recommend to our listeners who wish to educate themselves further about racial justice and Black activism and resistance? And please tell me you're working on that book yourself or your own, because you said I was writing one, right, asking you all these questions. So hopefully we'll see one of your books out there.
Yes, well, everybody here keeps, hollering at me about, starting that book. But I'm getting there, let's just say that.
Okay.
But, one thing I will recommend, and it's an excellent documentary, because we were talking about, of the Black Panther Party, the documentary 41st and Central.
41st and Central.
Yes, it's an excellent documentary, and it talks about that whole thing in terms of when the cops went to annihilate the Panthers and the after of all that. It's an excellent documentary. Well, in terms of books, there's so many, but in terms of a basic book, people just getting into trying to understand what happened to Black people. The book by Chancellor Williams, Destruction of Black Civilization, is a good start. It's a good place to start, in terms of our history and how we got here. It's an excellent book. And there are so many. If people want to know about, there's a book by Max Stanford, a book called Ram about Max Stanford. Look it up on maxstanford.com. All his books are about, filling a lot of gaps that, things that happened before and after the Black Panther Party. Books on Black anarchism. There's this, by my comrade Lorenzo Irving, want to understand that area. Those are good books. Another young brother coming up is William C. Anderson. He has a new book, Nation or No Nation. I can't remember the name, but he's a good resource also. And I will recommend The World in Africa too, by W.B. Du Bois, because what's going on in Mali right now is we should really be looking at. Russia is behind a lot of it, and I have some issues with Putin. A lot of people think that he's a revolutionary, which he is not. But people need support from where they can get it, and there's some strong brothers in Africa I know that are trying to do the right thing there. One of General Ibrahim Traore, and I just hope that, all those involved will keep an autonomous position, when dealing with these superpowers. You dig what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Of the superpowers, even Russia and the United States, they have their own interests, and states always have their own interests, and Africa needs to be involved in its own interests. period, autonomously, and
that's why they, destroyed Libya and took out Gaddafi.
exactly.
Because of, him talking that independence talk as a bloc,
Exactly.
as a superpower, if you will. So, but
Exactly.
yeah, but moving forward, so what are your hopes for the future of Black liberation and autonomy? For the future?
My hopes are really simple, man. People got to get back, like over the years, and that's, like we're living in a period of rising, white supremacy, and it's becoming mainstream, and it's backed by millions of dollars, especially in the U.S. And the U.S. has even been supporting all the conservative groups here in Canada. You know what I'm saying?
Hey, on that note, though, ain't it something how no matter if it's a Republican or a Democrat who's in office, they support right-wing fascist governments. Like
Exactly.
I know you got issues with Putin, but that Zelensky government, that Ukrainian government, white nationalists and huh?
No argument. No argument.
Yeah, so I'm saying to the people, I know I'm not telling you nothing new, but I guess I'm saying to the people, pay attention to how a Democratic Party right now is talking about democracy is under assault, but yet if you check the history books, every administration, including this one right here, have backed right-wing fascist, even racist governments that would bow to corporate interests here in the United States. Am I lying, bro?
No, bro, you ain't lying at all. I don't see no difference really between the two parties. This one is a little more finesse. You know what I'm saying? There's only one party in the United States.
Well, I will say this, and then I'll leave it at that, and I'll give you the final word. I will say this, though, in terms of my activism as an abolitionist, you mentioned 2013, Black Autonomy, that's when we met. But that's also when I launched New Abolitionist Radio, and I went through several co-hosts before, we settled on the final three. But State Star, it was only through the Democratic Party that was introducing the legislation to change these state constitutions, supposed to be their supreme laws of the land, and telling us that slavery been abolished when that's not what your language in your constitution says. So I'll say that, that's the only party I see that has been a friend to the abolitionist movement and the agenda, that we have, which is a simple one: abolish slavery in your constitution. And then from there, you give the legal framework for the people who are suffering from the prison slavery to sue for relief. You follow me?
Yes, but which party did you say is the only one that supports
Democrats. Only the Democratic Party. The Republicans ain't, because they neo-Confederates, dog. Trump laying wreaths at Andrew Jackson's tomb. You got Ron DeSantis, also a neo-Confederate supporter. So, but yeah, but again, especially when it comes to global white supremacy, I've seen no difference in the two parties. When it comes to domestic white supremacy, one party seems to be more getting worse. Like you mentioned, it's getting worse, and they all out in the open with it and don't even care. But I'm gonna leave it right there. What would be your final, thoughts for the people as we conclude this? What I think is a pretty great conversation on your life, man.
Lastly, I would just like to say, man, if you're a young Black activist today, you have to be very astute, study, learn what the problems are, and have a love for the community, a love for the people. Like, all this is about building a better world for all people, not just Africans, but we are centered in the African community. But however you want to do it, know that's the final goal in making this world a better place for everybody. You know, and if you're not talking about that, then I question your motives. You know, if that's not your final goal, you know, because that's what it's really all about. You know, people just want to live. You know, they want affordable housing. They want to eat. You know, they don't want to live in tyranny and brutality. You know, keep those things on your agenda. You know, and keep it simple. You know, because in final analysis, it's all about love. It truly is about love.
I'll say. All right, brother Ross, you know the door to Black Talk Radio Network is always open. And some of those people that you mentioned that have these new books, man, you know, send me some information. Maybe we can get them on for an interview, you know, Black Talk Radio Network.
But for sure.
All right. Peace and blessings to you and your queen there. And I want to thank her for helping, you know, you connect with us tonight, man. Peace and blessings.
All right, man. That's all. God bless you.
All right, folks. I believe my next live stream will be Tuesday. I'm interviewing the Libertarian candidate for governor of North Carolina, and going to talk to him about the issue of police brutality. We live in the same county, and there's some local issues, but you know, it is a national thing. Police brutality is international. So yeah, definitely stay tuned to the network. Black Talk Radio News with Scotty Reid will be back for sure that Tuesday night around 8:00 p.m. Peace and blessings to all. Remember to strive in love.